Today's episode of the GoldCast is sponsored by the exciting, strange, perplexing 49ers NFL draft. And we're going to talk a lot about it because we are in no position to make any judgments, but we're going to talk about it. But before we get started, Raymond, why don't you let them know, where can they find us?
You can follow us on facebook.com/the GoldCast. You can also follow us on Instagram at the GoldCast, and you can also follow us on Twitter at the GoldCast _. Make sure to add that underscore on Twitter. And you can also subscribe to us via iTunes, YouTube, and Stitcher, all under the same name, folks, the GoldCast. Super easy. Like, comment, subscribe.
Super easy. All right, here we go. Draft. Overreactions, underreactions. I mean, who knows? Who knows at this point? We're not going to know for week 8 if any of this actually pans out. But still, this is the GoldCast, so we're going to talk about it. But first, GoldCast intro. Let's get busy.
San Francisco, are you ready? This is the GoldCast.
Boom! Welcome to another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the first, baby.
Boom! Okay. Ray, it is in. The NFL draft is done. The Niners have chosen. In the books. It is a done deal. So let's just review for all of our fellow GoldCast Nation. There was only one thing that I wanted in this draft, and in particular, in the first round. Can you remind the GoldCast Nation what that was?
Protection for the Italian Stallion.
And in particular, Quentin Nelson, who we both were not confident was even going to make it, and he didn't. He was picked up by Indy. Great pickup by them. Would you agree?
Yes, considering that Andrew Luck's career is on its deathbed, they needed that.
So what do? We go a little further down the line, and we pick up the best tackle from Notre Dame. We don't get the best guard from Notre Dame. We get the best tackle. We get Mike McGlinchey, and it's going to take me a while to pronounce that correctly. Mike McGlinchey. We pick him up, and I am literally bouncing off the walls. And then on Friday, with our second pick, we trade down, and we pick up Dante Pettis, wide receiver out of Washington. And this was the very kind of controversial pick, aside from our torn ACL guy. This was a controversial pick. And I'm going to say this before I hand it off to you. I think Shanahan has earned the right for us to be just a little faithful, if I may. A little faithful because this is a guy that single-handedly, as the offensive coordinator of the Atlanta Falcons, took them to the Super Bowl with his scheming. He's been very successful everywhere he's gone. If he saw something in this guy, who are we to say? And I'm not saying that people are down on him. I'm saying maybe plenty of people are high on him. But this was the first pick that pundits, analysts were kind of like, scratching their heads a little bit. But let's give him a little bit of leeway. He also has Jimmy G back there. Let's not forget that was a 9-1 team. And then when Jimmy G took over, everybody looked gangbusters. So a little bit of leeway there. But Raymond, I want to hear, what are your thoughts about the draft on the whole? And let's talk about, in particular, the first 2 picks.
Well, the first 2 are kind of what I expected them to focus on, which was offense. And that was also the case during the free agent market. So that was a huge thing that we addressed. We addressed every level. We addressed it center. We addressed it running back. We addressed tackle. We addressed wide receiver. Well, our wide receivers were set, but we addressed some of that, also in the draft, and also with some undrafted free agents too. But Dante Pettis, I thought was an amazing pick. This is the best return man in FBS history. He had 9 punt returns, not even kickoff returns, punt returns, which is extraordinarily more difficult than kickoff returns. He had 9 of those babies. Nothing didn't. I saw all 9 of the returns. They weren't necessarily like, wasn't a whole lot of, Dion or Rod Woodson type slashing. It was more just, very, very smart decision making. Enough speed to turn corners and make some jukes here and there, and just kind of outrun guys and outpace them. That'll be obviously more challenging in the NFL, as the speed and of everything of the players will be, that much more better. So that'll be his big challenge. A lot of people are thinking like, well, he's also slot receiver. I was like, yeah, but according to the scouting reports, he can do a full range of route running, which means that he can play any position. He can play slot, he can play 2, he can play 1. So I think what we're going to see from early this year is see him kind of do punt returns, special teams. So he'll probably compete with Trent Taylor, because Trent Taylor currently does punt returns. But I think Trent will be the stapled slot receiver. Of course, he'll have to win that job out. But I like the pick. I think he's amazing. I thought Mike McGlinchey's awesome. He's the same exact size of Trent Brown, who I thought was, over 300 pounds, 6'8". The only difference is Mike McGlinchey's much more polished. He's a first pick versus a 7th pick. There's a big difference in talent level, between a first round draft pick and a 7th round draft pick. Not to suggest that a late round pick can't become great, but there was a lot of doubt and durability issues surrounding Trent Brown, although I liked him anyways. But clearly this guy is a step above that. He's going to be a day 1 starter. He's also 6'8", over 300 pounds. It's just an amazing, massive, massive man. And that's going to be protecting Jimmy G's front side, not his blind side. That obviously always goes to your best tackle on the left, which is Joe Staley. So I like the first 2 picks. And then from that, I remember you were showing you were a little wary at that point. You're like, man, we haven't addressed defense yet. And I said, hey, relax. I was like, I expect it to be defense from here on out. And I was mostly right, with the exception of the final 7th round pick, which was a wide receiver. But other than that, we addressed every single position in the defensive level. We addressed defensive line, we addressed linebacker, we addressed cornerback, and we addressed safety. The only thing that I thought was odd, and I know a lot of other people feel the same way, and that's because we got a lot of this with Trent Baalke, and obviously I'm alluding to the ACL stars, guys that had potential but then dropped in the draft because they had, injuries. And there's actually 3 players in this draft class that had significant injury coming out. Fred Warner, he's a linebacker. He not necessarily a pass rusher, which I was hoping we were going to get, but apparently the draft wasn't really rich in that position. So clearly the Niners either didn't feel confident about the players available at that position and are banking on our existing group, which is Eli Harold, Cassius March, those kind of guys. Then there was the round 4, 128th overall pick, Contavious Street, defensive lineman out of NC State. This guy, run stopper guy, also had some pass pressure with 8 sacks during his 4-year career at NC State, although that wasn't his primary job. He was more of a run stopper guy, disrupt the line of scrimmage, eat up blockers. But he had an ACL tear during a private workout during the pre-draft process. So this guy's only going to come back into the conversation by next year's draft. So that one was odd. Then there was another one, DJ Reed. I thought that was a fine pick. Nothing out of the ordinary there. Then it was Marcel Harris, safety out of Florida, round 6, 184th overall pick. Another season-ending injury due to a torn Achilles. They're young, so it's like, you buy cheap, and then if they turn out great, then it's a steal, obviously. But again, these are two Baalke-esque picks, within 3 rounds here. And then there was also the last player, Julian Taylor, wide receiver. His season was cut short last year.
You mean Richie James? Richie James. Sorry,
Richie James. You're right. Julian Taylor is a defensive tackle. Richie James was round 7, 240th, 5'10", one of those small, little shifty slot guys. But he put up good numbers, but in 2017, his season was cut short because of broken collarbone. Now, not as significant as an Achilles, but again, a significant injury nonetheless. So those 3 players in particular, we're not going to hear anything about these guys, for at least another year. so they're out of the picture. So the ones I'm most curious about is obviously Mike McGlinchey, day one. Dante Pettis, he's going to be day one. Fred Warner, most likely going to compete and be part of a rotation. Tavius Moore's out. Contavious Street, this guy's going to compete. He's going to compete for starting job. He's small. This guy's only 5'9", 180 pounds. Really small for a corner, but apparently has good instincts and good length. So we'll see what that happens. We'll see what happens out of that. He's kind of it's a project. A lot of these guys are projects, and then there's a huge undrafted class too. I don't know if we have enough time to cover it, but we'll probably hear more about those guys, as minicamp and everything starts and the press starts to cover who stands out, who doesn't, that kind of deal. But overall, I thought it was a solid draft. We addressed offensive concern, can hopefully contribute to the defense. I still believe there's a glaring hole in pass rush. I don't necessarily know if the guys we have are going to step up. The Niners are banking on that, so we'll see how that works out. If people step up, if Eric Armstead gets injured again, then we obviously know what's going to happen to his future. If Cassius March can kind of play better than better than what his production has shown, and he's says that he's got a chip on his shoulder because no one's ever doubted him. Okay, well, prove the doubters wrong and show that you can remain on a team for longer than a season or two. Prove that you can be a long-term player because you're productive.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So here we are taking flyers on dudes that cannot even play this season, right?
3 of them.
And then Shaq Griffin goes to Seattle, and he has a great draft. And for those who aren't familiar, it's the guy that doesn't have the left hand. He's missing a hand. So
yeah,
this is what confuses me. We're willing to take flyers on dudes that can't even play. Yet this guy has shown an extraordinary ability to play with only one hand. So why don't we take a flyer on at least one dude that can play right now? You know what I mean? Like, isn't that? And he went to Seattle. He's in the NFC West. He's here. We might have to deal with him. Like, if we're going to go that route, at least that dude can go to practice now. He's not in rehab somewhere trying to work his ACL out. You know what I mean? I just thought that was the part that was perplexing and strange. I alluded to a little bit in the beginning. Like, if we're going to go this route, then why don't we get Griffin? Because at least the dude can go to practice right now, and he has the drive and the heart. Not saying it's going to pan out, but I mean, pardon my language, fucking A. I mean, at least he's not literally in a hospital somewhere rehabbing his leg.
Right.
I mean, that was it. That was like the one thing for me. I'm just like, all right, okay, like if we're going to go down this route, I just said this a second ago, but if we're going to go down this route, I'm going to say it again. If we're going down this route, then why not at least take a flyer on a dude that can walk into the practice squad right now and go, versus guys that we don't even know if they'll ever pan out, and they've never panned out. So I don't understand why we repeated this process. Like, they've never panned out. There's no history of success for these players with the 49ers, I guess, with the exception of like Michael Crabtree, I guess, but
yeah, but he already started by the time he got an ACL injury. Like, he was already on the roster being productive. Then he had one like the next year or 2 years later or something like that. He had already contributed, is my point. I think one caveat I'd like to add to the mix here is I realize that Balky was like 0 for 7 in this category. At the same time, this is somebody different, John Lynch, making these selections, and last year had a very productive draft class, and they all contributed. So, this is his first time picking players that are a little bit of a flight risk, but on the flip side, they're late round picks. So you're not losing a whole lot in terms of your investment, your spending. So that's the good news. And then the other part of it too, that I think, is worth considering too, is that, like I said, this is John Lynch. So let's see if John Lynch can turn around, the bad streak, because I know the articles kept saying Niners have a history of drafting. I was like, no, Trent Baalke has a history of drafting this. If this had been a trend from other GMs and it never worked out, that'd be one thing. But this was a Trent Baalke thing that he would love to do. And so I think the only thing we can do, because we don't have a choice really, is we have to kind of wait till next year to see if the 2 ACL guys can contribute at any level, let alone a high level. And then the collarbone receiver, I think. He'll obviously heal up before Rich James will heal up before the other two guys, before Marcel Harris and Contavious Street. So we'll have to see how that works out. But other than that, I think
Yeah.
we got to see how this works out. Like if it's going to yield the exact same results, then regardless of age, then ACL injured guys are just just not worth it. But we're not the only team that does it, so it's not like we're alone in this category. There
That's
are other
fair.
teams that do this too. So we just have to see how it's going to pan out. But I can't help, and I know a lot of fans feel the same way. Can't help but feel a little, like, oh God, rolling the eyes, like here we go again, just because we saw how badly this turned out with Trent Baalke. But Trent Baalke made lots of bad picks. It wasn't like these were his only bad picks. That would be one thing. He made bad picks all over the place. So
That's true.
John Lynch has made great picks all across the board on offense and defense. So we'll have to see if these guys can, live up to the hype.
It's just frustrating. It's just, and we're almost time's up. We're doing a short one tonight, folks. But it's just frustrating to see that kid, Griffin, go to the Seattle Seahawks. Now he's in the NFC West. Maybe nothing comes of him. Maybe he's on the practice squad and that's it. But the Niners had a lot of opportunities to pick him up. And if we're gonna take flyers on kids with torn ACLs that are in rehab that may never play, why not get this one kid who's super driven, had a really good combine, and instead of doing that, we took flyers on these other guys, and now that kid's opposite of us in the Seattle Seahawks. I mean, do you see where I'm going with all that? Like, that's my one thing. If he went anywhere else, I probably wouldn't even care. I probably wouldn't even be bringing him up. But the fact that he's in Seattle, I'm just like, we could have taken this kid. We could have taken him.
I get what you're saying, but at the same time, Shaquem Griffin is he's a 5th round pick. Fred Warner, the guy we got, he's 6'3", 236, and he's a 3rd round pick. So there's a difference in skill level, versus what round you've been taken at. I don't doubt his resolve. I don't doubt his fortitude. He clearly made it to the NFL, and now he gets to play alongside of his brother. I think that's an awesome story. But at the same time, we got our linebacker 2 rounds before that. So I'm not too worried about that one, but I understand the comparison you're making.
Fair enough. All right, we're gonna wrap it up. We're about there, but I just want to touch on real quick. One of my favorite things this weekend, Ray, was I saw on YouTube Max Kellerman from First Take saying, just bald face, looking right in the camera, ton of conviction, saying that the Warriors could not beat the Pelicans without Steph Curry. There was no way they were going to be able to do this. They're just too hot. They're too strong. Then game 1 happens, and the Pelicans, they get a nice dose of what it's like to play against the Bay. So just real quick, 30 seconds, say how you feel. I loved it. Obviously, we have 3 more to go. This is far from over, but this is like, we were saying this earlier, this is my let's go moment of the week. Let's go.
Well, the Pelicans, even though I think obviously have more star power than San Antonio and are a better seeded team than San Antonio, I just think San Antonio is a little bit more sound because they're coached better. So I think they're a better team. They just lack star power. If they had Kawhi Leonard, that would have been a different story. I think they're much better with Kawhi Leonard there. I think they're a better team than the Pelicans. Pelicans just got good. How long has, their coach been trying to, turn that team around? It's taken a few years, but then again, it's not easy to turn around any professional sports team. But here's the thing. You still have 3 All-Stars, including Andre Iguodala, former 2-time All-Star, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, both contributed, 27, 26 points. Both had Kevin Durant had a double-double. Klay Thompson has been having a phenomenal postseason this year. I think the best playoffs run I've seen him do yet. I don't think he's had a better one so far. I've never seen him this consistent. So sometimes he's kind of up and down in the previous, especially in the early years, or the first couple of years. But I mean, they got double-digit scoring from the Quinn Cook, Sean Livingston, Andre Iguodala added 12. So that's 3 double-digit contributors off the bench. Not a lot, let alone your starter. Draymond Green had a triple-double. Kevon Looney continues to be awesome on the defensive end. So David West contributed 8 points. So there's just too much depth, I think, for the Pelicans to handle. They just, the Warriors outscored them 3 straight quarters until the fourth, and still they lost by 22 points. So this is I think they'll bounce back next game, but I still think the Warriors take game 2. Maybe not by 22 points, but perhaps like by half that, like 10 or 13 or something like that.
I think so too. It was my let's go moment of the week. Let's go. Before we leave, congratulations to the Giants for finally taking their first series this year against the Dodgers. That was awesome, especially bouncing back last night after that ridiculous ass whooping. I was happy to see that. We'll talk a little bit more about them later. But Raymond, before we go, why don't you let them know? Where can they find you?
You can follow me on Twitter at Ray Solis, or you can follow me on Instagram at Ray Solis1. And yeah, I'm happy that the Giants took 3 out of 4 from the Dodgers too, despite all the injuries too. Hunter Pence is out. Mac Williamson fell down with a concussion after he came out red hot. Joe Panic might have surgery. He might be out for a couple months. He's on the DL. Mark Melanson was moved to the 60-day DL, so that's turned out to be a huge bust and a waste of money. So, but they're hanging tight in there, so it's good to see.
Good to see. Definitely good to see. Congrats to the Giants. You can find me on Instagram at Rudy Solis 3, on Twitter at Rudy Solis 3RD. So concludes another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the faithful. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the first, baby.
Boom. We'll see you next time. Same GoldCast time, same GoldCast channel.
This is the GoldCast.